paid good money to see this movie. When they go out to a theater, they want cold sodas, hot popcorn, and no monsters in the projection booth.
Everyone pretend podcasting isn't boring.
Turn it off. Turn it off.
This is an incredible tale. Artists set up an apartment inside Providence Place Mall, going undetected for years.
We all hated the mall when it went up, right? Nobody wanted that to happen.
Shortly after, a developer comes in and says, I'm going to knock down your home.
I just had this idea. Oh, we should live in the mall.
It seemed like a very absurd fantasy and perhaps a great challenge. When the mall was being built, I saw a space that I could not figure out what it would be used for. We went looking for that anomaly in the architecture, and we snuck ourselves in there, and we took out our flashlights. And there it was. It started the conversation immediately.
We need to develop this underutilized space.
There was a real necessity to build a wall there.
It was like 5,000 pounds of cinder blocks.
It's important to emphasize there's this underlying sense of dread that we're going to get caught at any time.
Wow. So what is it? Is it a prank? Is it a work of art? Is it a social experiment?
It was like this alternate universe within the real world.
It talks about gentrification, capitalism, everything being commodified.
The apartment was the side project to the other stuff.
We were like a little elite strike force team of empathetic artists.
Such a magic thing to take a space from the mall.
Holy smoke.
Hey folks, welcome to a special episode of The Projection Booth. I'm your host, Mike White. On this episode, I'm talking with Jeremy Workman and Michael Townsend. Jeremy is the director, and Michael Townsend is one of the subjects of the new film Secret Mall Apartment. It is about a group of 8 people that discover a hidden space inside of a mall in Providence, Rhode Island, and kind of create an art project out of it. The irony that I didn't bring up during this interview is I've only been to Rhode Island one time, and I think I went to that mall. I think I saw X-Men First Class there. So kind of strange to see it again and see it in this context. I had a great time talking with these guys. Had a great time watching the movie. Definitely check it out when it comes to your town. It is actually playing theatrically right now, so check those local listings, as they say. And if it is already gone, or if you don't have a theater around you playing it, keep looking, check it out, and I think you will really enjoy watching this film. And I hope you enjoy listening to this interview. Jeremy, tell me, how did you even first hear about this secret apartment?
I didn't know anything about this story. It was like urban legend in Providence. I'm not from Providence. I've been making documentaries in New York for the last decade, and I didn't really know anything. I was out in Athens, Greece. I was filming for another documentary of mine called Lily Topples the World, which has nothing to do with any of this. And it was about this young woman who becomes the world's greatest domino toppler. She was out there. I was filming her, and the building that she was in was covered in incredible tape art, masking tape art, which for your listeners and the people that will see the movie, Michael Townsend is the world's foremost tape artist. So this is putting tape art on the walls and facades of buildings in spectacular ways. I saw that tape art. I instantly was intrigued. I've done a number of films about artists and people that are doing sort of quirky, unique things. I wanted to meet Michael, and we met, and I didn't know anything about this secret apartment in the mall. And somewhere along the line, he told me. I couldn't believe it. I thought he was punking me. I thought he was totally full of it. And he then at one point whipped out, this was in Greece, like late at night. He whips out an iPad that was like with a cracked screen. We're showing you, your listeners can't see it, but it's like cracked and crappy. And he like connects to the cloud, and he shows me footage of them pushing up the couches, up the ladders. And I was instantly blown away. What I didn't know at the time was that this was a pretty famous story in Providence. And for nearly 20 years, filmmakers had wanted to make this documentary. I feel fortunate that I was the one that got to.
Michael, why Jeremy? Why was he the one that was allowed to do this?
As Jeremy mentioned, there was a persistent interest in turning this narrative into a larger project. A lot of directors coming out of the woodwork, and we were not interested in the story being told as prank or the focus being solely on it as a stunt or folklore, or the focus being entirely on me. Those are things I'm just not interested in. When I met Jeremy, I actually got to see him at work. So he's out in the field. I get to see him with his subject matter. I get to see how he approaches eccentric artist folks. And that went a long way towards trusting him. On top of that, I had seen one of his movies before and really liked it. The World Before Your Feet.
Yeah, that's the one about the guy walking every street of New York City.
Yeah, really liked that film. So it was interesting to actually meet a filmmaker that I already liked, see his process, and I trusted him. When we had conversations about it as a film, I said, hey, look, here's the reason I've turned everyone else down. The story of the mall is informed by all the other artwork that was happening around that project. So this team of 8 artists were involved in a lot of very serious and intense artwork, of which the mall is one piece. And if you're able to capture all those things, in my personal opinion, I think you got a good story. And in order to tell it, you're going to need to have interviews with all the artists. They're all out in their field, living their own art lives. So he's going to have to convince 8 people, and then he's going to have to go to Providence and find some talking heads to give us context. This is a lot of work. So we just trusted it. Jeremy just seemed up for it. And luckily, when I handed him a hard drive of all of the footage we had shot, he was convinced fairly immediately that there was some good bones there.
Yeah, an underrated part of documentary filmmaking is convincing people to let you make a movie on them. It's a real part of being able to make documentaries. And it's not easy because you're not offering money, you're not offering fame. It's a difficult process. You're going into their lives, you're asking them challenging questions, you're demanding time from them. So it's a part of the process of being a documentary filmmaker is earning the respect of your subjects.
So you had one person with Michael. How do you get the other 7?
It was very much about what Michael alluded to. I really went into it looking at this as, first of all, the whole thing with living in the secret apartment, it's amazing. It's spectacular. It's like a heist movie. You can't even imagine how fun and ridiculous and entertaining and stupid and just bonkers fun it all is. Behind that, they were also doing these really incredible things on the side. They were making memorials for 9/11 that they were doing anonymously. They were going into children's hospitals and working with children that were extremely sick. And they were doing that for essentially no money, and they were doing it every week. So there was all these other things that this group was doing. And I was fascinated by that. And I think that just that simple act of just being really interested in those aspects and how it connected to the secret apartment and how there was all these cross currents between the two, I think that's what made the group feel okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's fantastic. Was everybody all spread out? Did you have to do a lot of traveling for this? Obviously, you're talking about Greece at the beginning of this story. Do you have to then travel the whole states, or?
Mostly these are all living, what we call the Mall 8. These are the 8 people that were with Michael and lived in the Providence Place Mall from 2003 to 2007, on and off. But there were 8 of them. Several of them, they're all still working artists, every single one of them, which I also found fascinating in some aspect, either art education or as working artists. So most of them are on the East Coast. They're in New England, they're in Providence, they're in New York. So that made it a little easier just to be able to corral them all.
You use a couple, I don't want to say props, but you do a few things in the movie that I found really very clever. The idea of the recreation of the apartment was wonderful. And then also the model of the whole mall. How does that come to be? How's that model brought into the fore?
First of all, your listeners should realize the secret mall apartment, it shapeshifts. And that's what I think is so neat for a viewer and was really neat for me as a filmmaker. On one hand, it's this stance against gentrification. On the other hand, it's this ridiculous prank. It's also this really deep Dada artwork. So it's all these things. And what it told me while making it was that I could just do anything and I could bring any idea to the table. And Michael
he said aloud at one point, he said, I've always wanted to have a model in one of my movies. In The World Beneath Your Feet, there's a scene where there's a big model of the city, and he's like, but I would like to have one for me. And I'm like, you know what?
Yes.
One of the Mall 8, Colin, can totally make you a model. You want a mall? He'll give you a mall.
So he builds this gigantic model out of wood of the mall. But what we did that was really interesting is that becomes part of the movie where you watch him make it. And it's not just a prop, it becomes a way to involve the character, the subjects to participate.
Well, it's a nice reminder that we're artists. Given 5 or 6 hours to tell the story, you can dive into all the different artists and what they make and all that. But so it's a nice sort of view into the other art worlds that are happening in the periphery.
The other thing that we did, of course, is Michael participated in the recreation. So he was actively building the recreation set with our production designer. And these are scenes that you watch in the movie. So the movie's doing this kind of very meta, it's like a ridiculous MC Escher, where you're just seeing all these different sides to this prism. You're seeing the making of it, you're seeing the recreation, you're seeing Michael involved in it, you're seeing the footage that they shot, and it's all peppered in this different prism. And it was also a way to bring Michael into the participation of the story as well, where he acts in the recreation.
Yeah, how was that? Was that your first acting gig, or had you been on screen before?
I don't know if it's acting. I can play myself. Right. If I can play someone else, that's acting. If it's just me, I'm pretty good at that.
The whole idea that you're talking about with all of these, like the 9/11 project and Oklahoma City and all these, I'm like, where's he going with this? And then it really comes together at the end. And I'm just like, okay, this makes so much sense. And like you said, paints that larger world rather than it just being, here's these 8 people that had this apartment in a mall.
As a longtime just even listener to the projection booth, I'm a cinephile and I'm a fan of, I think my entry into making documentaries is with scripted films and with fiction films. One of the things that scripted films do is they throw you in the deep end. They don't explain everything, where documentaries often, they fill in the blanks and they explain a lot, and they make sure the audience knows where they are at all time. And one of the things that we were trying to do in this movie is just throw you into these scenes, into the deep end, and you, a viewer, would have to figure out where they were and figure out how it all made sense. And then it hopefully all adds up in the end. So that was something that we tried to do from the get-go.
Jeremy and Michael, I'm so sorry that we have to cut this short. I just had the little window of time, but I hope we can talk again one of these days. Jeremy, definitely keep me in the loop. I would love to talk to you about more of your work.
Yeah, I should come on and talk about some absurd noir or 70s obscurio or whatever.
I would absolutely love it. Nice to meet you. You guys have a good rest of your day.
All right. Thanks so much.